unsatisfying job of supplying the then Air Defense Command, which is the precursor to what we now know as NORAD. Lou served as an inventory item manager responsible for processing supplies for this new command and control center that we were building inside of Mountain. Never done before, soon to be known as America's Fortress, just up the road at Cheyenne Mountain. His outstanding support to that mission and to supplying the unit earned his unit in the Wing the Air Force Outstanding Unit Award. So right off the bat, his contributions to the excellence and the achievement of the mission were apparent. Now looking ahead, after PCSing here, this most beautiful part of the country in beautiful Colorado Springs, Colorado, I have no doubt that when he got notified of orders, that he feared for the worst. Probably moving down to hot, humid Florida, or even as far north as Thule or Alaska, but instead his orders took him all the way down the road, maybe like 3 miles, over to Ent Air Force Base, which is now known as the U.S. Olympic Training Center. It used to be an Air Force base. So he packed up his things, walked about 3 miles down the road, which he did tell me was not, it is actually more difficult than it sounds, because from what you told me, it wasn't even paved back then, right? You guys were still on dirt roads and paths between these two bases. While they were again supporting NORAD, supporting the newly minted North American Defense Command, ensuring that at the time, it was a tumultuous time, we have to remember, at the beginning of the Cold War, making sure that America's skies and borders of our partners up to the north were safe and secure. All right, he had a very specific and deliberate impact in that mission, in standing up the mission, which we still have today. Now, that's not to say that his career was highlighted by hanging out in the rear in beautiful Colorado Springs, supplying the air defense mission. No, Lou went ahead and he forward deployed. He went out to the fight to Vietnam in 1967 to Phu Quoc Air Base, where he was a repair cycle support unit supply airman. There he had actually the most critical job that we can task supply members in a forward location, and that's to support the maintenance and the generation cycle for aircraft. So the way that it works, for those unfamiliar, which there are not many here, the fighters have to fly the aircraft forward. The maintainers make sure that the aircraft are ready to go, to take off the ground. But the most important part is the suppliers, is folks like Mr. Jackson, who made sure that 24/7, the piece parts, all those tiny little things that the rest of the Air Force likes to not think about because it scares them, are available, they're ready for the maintainers so the aircraft can fly. During Vietnam, that's exactly what Lou did. He was there for the air offensives of 1967 and 1968, and directly supported the air-ground offensive of 1968. So truly performing his wartime task, which is what we ask all servicemen. Coming home from Vietnam, and I'm sure desiring nothing more than perhaps to move another 5 miles up the road, but remain in Colorado Springs, instead the Air Force saw fit to move him clear across the country, back to the East Coast, back to Bolling Air Force Base, and later Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, as part of the 2045th Communications Group. Now that communication group, no longer in active service, but when it was, they had a critical mission. He worked on new and upcoming technologies and communication systems that provided voice communications worldwide on behalf of the DoD and their leadership in the DC area. So truly worldwide impact returning from the war. Following the hardship tour, which DC is, for those of us that have been there or lived there, Lou was returned to the state that he would ultimately call home, here at Peterson Air Force Base in 1974. As a supply specialist, he tirelessly worked to support the air defense mission and our nation. Some of the supply accounts that he kept stocked and that he kept track of are still in use today. In fact, if my kids have anything to say about it, some of the aliens that work inside that building, which I'm pretty sure are there, Lou supplied them as well. Probably why we'll never see those ROSs. Lou left Colorado Springs for one additional overseas tour. this time to support the flight maintenance operations at Incirlik Air Base in Turkey in 1978. He did that for a short while, and then he came back to Peterson Air Force Base. Again, this time as Peterson Air Force Base. Now, Lou was not all work and no play. I don't want you to take that from the bio so far. He excelled as an athlete, competing in track, basketball, and softball. He was a frequent member of the base traveling teams, both for Ent and for Peterson. He played at the highest level of competition that the Air Force had to offer against other Air Force bases, so he got to travel a lot, as well as Army, Navy, and Marine Corps teams that met them in tournaments. Everywhere he went, he spread a positive message of service and sacrifice, showing truly the best that the Air Force had to offer. Twice he was given accolades, not only for his participation and leadership on these sports teams, but for what he was doing within the community. His community involvement in churches, and involvement in several community organizations culminated in accolades from the commanding general for his service with the Easter Seals, and one particular sporting event whereby he went ahead and jumped into a wheelchair for some wheelchair basketball. So truly somebody that came to embrace this community, came to embrace Colorado Springs as his own, and make a difference. Now, he wasn't finished with his uniform service in 1980, Lou did finish his uniform service in 1983 at what is now called Headquarters Air Combat Command in Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, after 21 years of service. So not only did he don the uniform as a young airman out of Pennsylvania, he made it all the way through. He served his country far more than what the military service normally requires, and he was able to retire after 21 years. So I ask you, what does a patriot do when he hangs up his uniform? What does a man with 21 years of accumulated knowledge as a logistician do? Well, you move back to the best place that you know of here in Colorado Springs, and you get right back to work. Lou did that, returned to Colorado Springs following leaving the active duty service as a contractor. And he served as contractor for 20 years before becoming a GS employee, or a Federal Service employee. Now, during those 20 years, the military bio obviously simply states that his military service was complete, but we all know that isn't the end of it. We all know that during those 20 years, he served various roles within the supply disciplines, whether within stock control, material control, emergency supplies to the flight line and to the space mission. He served in pretty much what could be best described as the lineage of the 21st Logistics Squadron, which I now command. He served whether it was in a supply squadron, a detachment, or what we now know as the Logistics Readiness Squadron. He was here. He was the staple that remained, again, in the warehouses we probably should have replaced a while ago, but he has been here the whole time. The best accolade and the best proof of his service to us is that during those 20 years as a contractor, the contracts swapped out 5 times. 5 times they were competitively bid, and 5 times they chose to keep him on board. So if that doesn't tell you about his work ethic, his value to not only the Air Force and the mission, but to the commercial companies who are there to make a profit and to support us, that was you. For 20 years and 5 different contracts, you were there. And then, luckily for us, we insourced and we got to keep you even longer. And now as a GS employee. So, truly, he has grown with Peterson Field and Air Force Base, Peterson Air Force Base, the squadron, the mission, both air defense, space, and the flying mission that our reserve partners conduct every day. You've been there the whole time, and we can only start to thank you for that service. Speaking of which, what I know best is when I took command about 2 years ago. I walked through all of our workstations, which there are quite a few. I marveled at the fact that none of the warehouses had burned down yet. And then I met Lou out on the flight line. Speaking to him and his teammates, I realized very quickly, this is a man that is at the apex of his career. He knows more, far more than I will ever learn. He's probably forgotten more than I'll ever learn. And he knew not only what he had to do day in, day out to support the 302nd Flying Airlift Wing and their flying mission. He knew what I had to do to make sure that we supported that mission and to make sure that we supported the people that he worked with, which is really what matters. He was an advocate for the employees under him. He was a friend to those of us of the same peer group and grade. And quite frankly, he served as a very, very able historian who could tell me everything about everything when it came to supply on Peterson Air Force Base. I can tell you that every day that I spoke with him and interacted with him, he carried himself with confidence that only experience can instill. And he was truly an asset to the unit. I asked very early on, fearfully, I asked Mr. Mouton, what's up with Lou Jack? And more importantly, he's not going to retire in the next few years, is he? To which Mike famously replied, well, sir, he's been here forever. And he's claimed that he was going to leave Peterson and retire about 5 times since I've been here. So I think it's a safe bet that he'll remain during your command. And I can only say that story because Moo is on leave right now and he can't yell at me later. But I am forever thankful for the time that I spent with you as the commander and for you within the squadron. During my command, I had the opportunity to present you with various awards. First, coining you and your team for the support to the 302nd Airlift Wing and their firefighting efforts. Again, direct mission impact. As well as the 302nd multiple deployments downrange to support the fight that we see on the news, but that we know we support from back here. I watched as you meticulously maintained the equipment that we needed to protect our airmen, whether it be gas masks, critical to those that actually have to pull them out of the pouches, to helmets, to first aid kits. I mean, these are things, folks, if you're not familiar with them, these are truly the first things that, for those of us on the ground, that we grab, all right? There's no better feeling to know that your helmet is gonna work, that it's there, your gas mask may or may not work, hopefully you don't have to test it, and that your first aid kit is right there on your hip. These are the things that you did, the confidence that you instilled, not only in the airmen, but in the soldiers that were downrange. We were also able to present you with a quarterly award for which you won not only in the squadron level, but also in the group, beating out many civilians and coming this close to winning at the wing, almost being the best civilian for that category within that quarter in the wing. So we were that close, but not winning at the wing level does not diminish your accomplishments by any means. We had probably the best protective equipment element in the Air Force Reserves, and I would argue probably one of the best in the Air Force. The knowledge that you were able to pass between the Air Force Reserve side and the active duty side made both of them better and made us better at accomplishing our mission. So that brings us to about a month and a half ago. Well, I'm sorry, about 3 months ago, so that Lou doesn't get in trouble. I'll say 3 months ago, he came in and said, sir, I think this is it. I think I'm ready to hang it all up, and I'd like you to officiate it. To which I remember what Mr. Mouton told me, and I said, got it, sure, get back to work. you're not leaving before me. And then I remember one day I was going by military personnel. I saw him out there. We greeted each other, and I said, hey, what are you doing here in the headquarters building? He said, well, I'm attending my TAPS, the transition for airmen as they retire, and my final retirement briefings. No, you're not. I didn't sign that paperwork. So somehow somebody signed for me, and here we are. And so it is with a heavy heart that we say, on behalf of the 21st Logistics Readiness Squadron, goodbye, good luck, and thank you for your many years of faithful service to the Logistics Squadron, the Supply Career Field, our Air Force, and our nation. Lou, please step forward to receive the Civilian Career Service Award.
Attention to orders. The Department of the Air Force presents the